Time for the French newspapers now. Elena's with us here on set. Of course, the big story of the weekend here in France has been that big speech by Nicolas Sarkozy. But how did it go down, Elena?
Well, it's his U-turn on Europe that's most headline-grabbing. Of course, he's spent the last few months trying to criticise François Hollande for his wanting to renegotiate the recent treaty over European budget discipline. Hollande wants to allow more space for growth. Sarkozy and his lieutenants over at the UMP have been saying that's naive and unrealistic. You can't renegotiate European treaties once they've been passed. And now he says he wants to negotiate the Schengen Treaty, which, unlike, of course, the recent budget discipline treaty, is one that's been in place for 20 years and that no other European leaders would like to have a look at again. But he wants to. Now, this is what Le Parisien has called the shock speech, which has kick-started the campaign for the business paper Les Echos. It's Sarkozy on the offensive for a protectionist Europe. Now, they say inside that lots of this isn't all that surprising. Made in France has become quite the campaign theme this election. It's quite in fashion, if you like. Every candidate from Marine Le Pen to François Hollande has talked about restarting the French production. So it's not that unsurprising that he should go for the idea of a Buy European Act. The idea of renegotiating the Schengen Agreement isn't all that surprising either. It was mentioned last year by both Sarkozy and Berlusconi when they felt France and Italy were being asked to take an unfair share of all the immigrants coming up from Tunisia after the Arab Spring. So that's not completely shocking either, especially because there does exist quite a strong demographic in France who are prepared to back this. Les Echos points out polls show 54% of the French thinks that borders need to be closed to some extent. And of course, there's been a general current that has been majority even in France for years against the kind of free exchange limits of Europe. Remember back in 2005, voters on both the left and the right threw out the Lisbon Treaty, despite all the main parties trying to exhort them to vote for it. So there's been that hardcore for a long time of French opinion who feel that the European free exchange has gone too far. So you can quite clearly see who he's trying to appeal to, they say. But nevertheless, this is quite a strong electoral move, showing that he's prepared to throw away all the European values that he has defended for the last 5 years as president, just to try and get himself re-elected.
Yeah, I suppose the big accusation is going to be that he's turned against Europe now.
Well, exactly. Le Figaro, of course, back him, but they've got this rather contradictory front page where the top headline here is Sarkozy wants to finish with Civ Europe, so they obviously agree with him that there's too many holes in it. But over here on the editorial, they defend him as the advocate of Europe, saying that while Hollande's wanting to renegotiate the budget treaty is naive and unrealistic, according to them, Sarkozy, by wanting to renegotiate Schengen, is putting himself in the footsteps of de Gaulle. It's bringing France back to its rightful place as a leader in Europe, trying to defend it by making it stronger. Of course, that's not what they think over on the left. In Libération, of course, they've got Villepin's Sarkozy targets Europe at the top of this front page. And on the inside, on their editorial, they accuse him of improvisation, saying that he's just totally contradictory. There's nothing very well thought out about this policy. They don't think. You can see that, according to them, that he's willing to drag Europe down to suit his own political ends. They also interview the rising socialist star Arnaud Montebourg inside. Now, he might be more responsible than any French politician for Made in France and indeed economic protectionism becoming this kind of a trend, because he did incredibly well in the socialist primary off the back of a kind of left-wing protectionism, saying he wanted to defend French production against being outsourced to China. So he, as you might expect, blames Sarkozy for copying his policies, saying the president is 5 years behind the Socialist Party on this.
Now, Made in France is the trend here in France, but Le Parisien is asking if the candidates are really practising what they're preaching.
Exactly. As I was saying, they've all been saying we need to buy products made in France and support local production. But Le Parisien is finding out if their campaign merchandise is actually made in France, which is quite embarrassing for some of them. They're all not doing very well. François Hollande has sold 20,000 campaign T-shirts at €10 each, but they're made in Portugal. And the campaign logo umbrellas are made in Holland. The UMP's not doing any better. At their shop, you can buy keyrings, notebooks, even iPhone covers with Sarkozy 2012 on them, but they're all made in China. And even the Front National, which is normally so keen on putting France first, is having its campaign merchandise made in Bangladesh. But we should point out that François Bayrou's centrist and Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the far-right Front de Gauche candidate, are practising what they preach. They both have all of their merchandise made in France.
Excellent stuff. A very important investigation has been done. Excellent stuff. All right, Elena, thanks very much. Elena with the French newspapers then here on France 24.